Ready to go, sir? Okay. Dan Van Abs is as accomplished a professional as you will find in the state of New Jersey. He has in fact been the leader on watershed planning and management for, we won't say how many decades right now, I guess. Dan is also as great a friend as the Watershed Institute has ever had. Dan is a professor of practice for water, society, and environment at Rutgers University School of Environmental and Biological Sciences, where he worked since 2012. His students benefit tremendously from Dan's real-world experience in solving environmental challenges. He doesn't just teach in the classroom, he gets his students enmeshed in the issues and the solutions to our problems. Before this position, Dan was Senior Director for Planning and Science with the Highlands Water Protection and Planning Council from 2007 to 2012, very non-controversial position. He managed the council's staff efforts regarding development and implementation of the Highlands Regional Master Plan. Prior to his time with the council, he served as Director of Watershed Protection Programs for the New Jersey Water Supply Authority for more than 8 years, creating and managing extensive source water protection program for the Raritan and Manasquan River watersheds. Before that, Dan worked for NJDEP for more than 12 years, including 6, serving as Assistant Administrator of the Office of Environmental Planning, with responsibilities for statewide water resources planning. You name it, Dan did it. He was responsible for the New Jersey Groundwater Quality Standards, the New Jersey Wellhead Protection Program Plan, and the New Jersey Statewide Water Supply Plan. He's had his time in the nonprofit sector as well. He was the technical director of the Passaic River Coalition for 4 years and has served on their board for quite a few years as well. He's served on boards and commissions on the state level, the Clean Water Council, which he's chaired. He's also served 2 6-year tours of duty as a trustee of the Watershed Institute. He's in a small group of people that have done that and had the patience for people like me. He continues to serve on our advisory board and our Science and Watershed Management Committee. Dan holds a BS in Environmental Studies from Rutgers University Cook College. And although he always protests to me that he's not a scientist, he's a planner, he earned a PhD in environmental science from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in association with Syracuse. Finally, Dan is the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2010 Peter Homack Award from the New Jersey chapter of the American Water Resources Association, the 2017 Sustainable Raritan Award, and the 2023 Edmund W. Stiles Award for Environmental Leadership from the Watershed Institute. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Dan Van Abs.
And Jim went on too long about my background when they gave me the award last year also. So let me start out by noting the water cycle on the slide. I don't know how many of you have used the water cycle in your time, but it's a lot of fun. Water is a fun thing if you look at it from that perspective. I do want to make some mention of the 75th anniversary of what was the Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association, now the Watershed Institute, and wish them a happy demisesquicentennial year. I actually had to look that up. I had no idea what the 75th year was called. In addition to all the things that Jim talked about, I got my start in the water field in 1972 as a high school junior. There was something else that was momentous happening that year as well, and that was the FWPCA. Have you ever wondered why we call it the Clean Water Act? The Federal Water Pollution Control Act amendments of 1972, familiarly known as the FWPCA, right? Passed that same year. So I've been at this as a volunteer, a student, a researcher, a planner, a professional, a manager, for as long as the Clean Water Act has existed in its current form. which is a little daunting when you come right down to it. So these are the things that I'm going to be talking about today in as short a period of time as I could manage. The other thing I will mention as a planner is that I also am a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners, Jim. So I am a planner. All right. The typical caveat, yes, I'm from Rutgers. Yes, I'm on various boards. I'm also on the Highlands Council board, or the Highlands Council at this point. My statements represent none of these organizations. This is me talking to you here. So let's think about New Jersey. Here is New Jersey in all of its, well, I won't say denseness. We're the most densely populated state. We're probably not the densest state in the country, but you look at that, and what do we have? We have the Route 1 corridor between Philadelphia and New York City. We have the Garden State Parkway down the shore. We have the cross-cutting routes of Route 80 and 78 and the 287 circumferential around New York City. And our development patterns certainly show that, right? Well, all of that development pattern has had environmental implications and water resources implications. One thing I will point out is this is coming to be more and more of a general approach in water resources management across the country. If you want to look up the US Water Alliance, they are very much promoting this idea. But the key point here is that all water is one. It's just a matter of time as water transitions from one location to another, from one use to another. And one of the interesting implications of this thought is that the term wastewater is an oxymoron. There's no such thing as waste water. There is contaminated water, but it's just waiting to take its place back in the cycle and be reused for other purposes. Okay, having said that, the only equation in the slide, here it is. For those of you who have taken microbiology, you know about Petri dishes. P equals E plus T plus R plus I, precipitation, evaporation, transpiration, runoff, and infiltration. And that's the natural system. But of course, there are these things called people. And what have we done to watersheds? Well, we build on them, right? We change the land use from a natural state to a human-caused state. And one of those is impervious surfaces. The inevitable result of land development, land change, is that we change the hydrologic system, and it's that basic. You cannot exist on this earth, you cannot have human society without changing water resources. The question is whether we accept those changes, not whether they happen. They will happen. It is inevitable. So, impervious surfaces and all the effects they have. I'm going to run through some things that are water quality issues caused by humans and talk about some of the things that New Jersey has done about them. So I'm going to start off with erosion and sediments. This is not where most people would start because after all, we think of multisyllabic pollutants, right? Per and poly, this, that, and the other thing, what my former colleague John Trella called diethyl death, right? Because he couldn't remember all the names. But this, nationally, is the most ubiquitous pollutant. The movement of sediment and turbidity through our streams. And this is an example of a stream bank that has been destroyed, is encroaching upon houses. Why? Because there's too much stormwater in the stream. That's upstream of Spruce Run Reservoir. So all of that sediment's going downstream into a reservoir. So sediment and erosion is a major problem. And we have the soil erosion and sediment control laws and regulations. We have the stormwater rules. The point is they apply to new development. How do we deal with these issues? Because these issues are coming from all of those impervious surfaces and the effects they've had. Solid and floatable materials, otherwise known as litter, right? Tremendous damage to ecosystems and so on. And what have we done about that? We have the Clean Communities program, which is for both education and also for cleanup. We have the plastic bag ban, which has worked very well. Frankly, I'm seeing far fewer trees with these plastic flowers in them over the last couple of years, which is really nice. But again, it doesn't deal with the whole issue. Biological oxygen demand, basically the oxygen that bacteria and so on take to break down organic wastes that are within streams. This is a great example from Delaware River Basin Commission of a success story. I remember reading and seeing the articles about the Delaware River being anoxic, zero oxygen in the water right around the Ben Franklin Bridge. Fish couldn't go up and down. Now, we have Shad Fest in Lambertville. Isn't it wonderful? I have no idea what a shad tastes like, but it's okay. We have Shad Fest. So this is a success story. On the other hand, we have nutrients, nitrogens, phosphorus, and the result, algal blooms, cyanobacteria blooms, which aren't really algae, but what the heck. And so what have we done about that? Nutriency fertilizer law, NJPD's permits for wastewater sources, and against the soil erosion and sediment control rules. Toxic and hazardous substances. You will never hear me say toxics. Toxic is an adjective. These are toxins and hazardous substances. I just talked to my students about that on Thursday, as a matter of fact. All sorts of different things out there, you know, from metals, which you cannot degrade. Metals do not degrade, that's their nature, up to these, 14-foot long words that we have penned to some of our chemicals. All sorts of things out there, pesticides, industrial compounds. A lot of this is legacy pollution in this nation, but a lot of it is not. And so what are we doing about that? Well, we have our NJPD's permits for wastewater sources, landfill controls. We have the spill fund in ISRA for cleaning up legacy contaminants. So we've done a lot with regard to this. Another one people tend not to think about is thermal pollution. If you really wanted to destroy a trout stream, there's an easy way to do it. That's eliminate the vegetation on both sides. That's all it takes. Increased sun, heats up the water, the trout can't survive. Doesn't take pollutants, except for energy as a pollutant. So what are we doing about this? Well, we have stream buffers that are required for our trout production streams, our Category 1 streams, and so on. And so we're taking action with regard to this. Green stormwater infrastructure, great move forward to try to reduce the thermal load to our streams. But despite all of these things we've done, impaired waters all over the state of New Jersey for a lot of different reasons, some of which are natural. So if you look at arsenic, that's a natural contaminant associated with soils and rock in New Jersey. But other things, pathogens, mercury, certainly not a natural contaminant in New Jersey. It's from air deposition mostly. Whole variety of things out there that are dealing with this. So that's my entry to this conversation. We all know about the water cycle, right? Everybody's seen this. You can have more complex diagrams than this, you can have less. What I want to talk to you about is the watershed management cycle. How does it work to really do watershed management, to address these issues at a large scale instead of for each and every individual pollutant source or property or whatever it happens to be, right? Because that is the tendency of regulatory management, is that we regulate things lot by lot, project by project, source by source. Watershed management is an acknowledgement that doing it that way is very laborious and in fact does not add up to watershed management. Because if it did, we wouldn't have these impaired water bodies. So clearly there's a shortfall. What do we do about that? Well, the first thing we do is we identify it as an issue with a priority for action. Something needs to be done, right? And so we launch an initiative. We're going to do watershed management because that'll pull everything together and we'll get everybody around a table and we'll have models and we'll have plans and everybody's going to have fun and be happy with the results. So you have to have a planning process. If you're going to have a plan, you need a planning process, right? How do you get the people together? Who do you get together? When do you get them together? How often do you get together? How do you compensate them for getting together? Because not everybody can afford to be at the table. Lots of issues there. Next step. Damn, this is complicated. You know, there's a lot going on here. A lot of people, a lot of issues. Everybody has a different perspective. So one of the complications is it takes too long. You know, we could have regulated 5 more industries in the same amount of time it took us to do this plan. Funding shortage. Funding shortage. We don't have enough money to even do the plan. How in the world are we going to implement it? And so we start rethinking. Is this really the best approach? Can we do this better? Do we reboot the initiative? Or do we hit the end of an administration and have a hiatus because they decided that what the other folks were doing couldn't possibly have been good because, after all, that was that administration and not this administration. And then we're back at the beginning. So I want to take you through several cycles, and check me on time because I'm a planner, I talk long. First cycle, and by the way, I've been involved in all of these over the course of my career, every single one of them. First one, watershed cycle number 1, late 70s, early 80s. This was the era of the 208 plans. How many people were involved in the 208 plans in this room? So area-wide water quality plans, 12 of them in the state of New Jersey, a couple of them sort of watershed-based, but most of them based on counties. And this was all driven by the Clean Water Act, Section 208. Interestingly enough, these are still legally valid under the New Jersey Water Quality Planning Act. How many people have a copy of one of the 208 plans in your office? My EPA colleagues up here. Frankly, I'm not sure that the DEP folks could put their hands on the 12 area-wide water quality management plans. So what happened? It was really complicated, and EPA stopped giving lots of money for continuing the planning process and keeping them updated. So DEP shifted gears and focused on a couple of things that it could do on a regulatory basis. Wastewater management plans to decide where sewage could go, and total maximum daily loads, otherwise water quality plans, to decide how much we needed to reduce pollutant loads for a specific number of pollutants. Very, very limited process. So, number 2, this is where I was in DEP. I was one of the lead staff people, managers, involved in this process. This was the very first time that we did watershed management planning at the watershed scale. We had 20 watershed management areas identified that were truly to watershed levels. I will admit to the fact that the numbering scheme is mine. My apologies. The only reason the numbers exist because the maps were too small to write in the names, and so I just took a map and put numbers on it, and it's still there. Okay, so what did we do? Well, we had all of these regional entities that were involved in this process. We actually, the department farmed this out to folks like the New Jersey Water Supply Authority and North Jersey District Water Supply Commission and so on and so forth around the state. Looking at water quality and water quantity issues, we wanted to do all sorts of things all together. We used corporate business tax funds under the 1997 Watershed law. And what did we find out? It was complex, it was expensive, and it was abandoned. In 2002, when the Whitman administration, actually the DeFrancesco administration, transitioned over into the McGreevey administration, the only plan that was actually finalized and given to DEP was for the Raritan Basin, and that was only because we, because I had shifted over there, started a year earlier than everybody else. Otherwise, ours would not have been either. Cycle 3, late 1900s to 2000s. This actually overlaps the prior one a little bit because we really started gearing up again on this notion of TMDLs, or water quality pollution plans. And the reason was because EPA pushed us. You know, there was a real, you folks got to catch up here. So we started doing TMDLs for all sorts of things all across the state, and that continued long after I left the department over to the Water Supply Authority. So that was going on, and then at the same time, EPA came up with this notion under the non-point source program to do what are called these 9-element watershed management plans. And DEP said, okay, that's what we want to do because they're on a smaller scale, and we think that we can actually deal with the issues if we do plans at a smaller scale. They're less complex, fewer people involved, the ability to focus on the issues more squarely, right? There are over 1,000 what do we call HUC 14, Hydrologic Unit Code 14 areas in the state of New Jersey. 17 of these plans got adopted. Why? Why don't we have so many more? And the answer is because there's a certain amount of money available, and the department decided that it wanted to be using more of the money for implementation. And if we spend lots and lots of money for plans, then by the time we actually get to implement something, we'll have to redo the plan because they'll be 10 and 15 years old. All right? So more of the money shifted over to implementation, and the planning process died. However, during that time, the fertilizer law came into play, which is great. So now we are in Watershed Cycle 4, which is the current one. And these involve the watershed improvement plans, which are not watershed-based necessarily. They are municipal, but they have to deal with watershed-based issues like the total maximum daily loads, the TMDLs, and water quality impairments. So this is a completely new approach. 564 municipalities, I think that's the current number, are responsible for each coming up with their own watershed improvement plan. But they can do them together if they want to, if they can organize it, if they can figure out the funding, and all of those kinds of things. The one real problem that I have with the rules, I'm all in favor of dealing with stormwater impacts on watersheds. All in favor, right? I'm all in. But the permit has no numerical objectives. You have to develop a plan, you have to identify priority projects. How much? Doesn't say. When? Doesn't say. Where? Doesn't say. Which pollutants? Doesn't say, right? So it's a promise of intent, but I'm not sure that it's going to get us what we want, because if you don't tell people what you want, the likelihood is that you won't get what you want because they're guessing, right? Okay. 4 cycles, and we're in the 4th cycle. We'll see how it goes. So what are the driving forces for and against success? 4 laws, right? Clean Water Act, New Jersey Water Pollution Control Act, which is the NJPTES program, the Water Quality Planning Act. Water quality violations, we know we have problems. Fish advisories, we know we have problems. Environmental justice issues. Many of our most damaged streams are in communities of color. How many of those watershed-based plans from cycle 3 were in urban areas? Not one. Not one. Why? Not a priority issue, no institutional capacity. 2 reasons. Okay, source water protection. We want our drinking water to be clean. Got to do something about it. And the potential for urban redevelopment to do things. What is working against us? Oh, that was supposed to go. Okay, there we go. What was working against us? Planning complexity. The broader your scope, the more people you have involved, the more issues you have to deal with, the harder it is to accomplish anything. Money. Environmental complexity. The more you narrow your scope to make it feasible to get something out, the more issues you're leaving off the table, which means that some things just don't get done. And then there's money. Frequent changes in state and federal priorities. Who would have thunk it, right? And then there's money. And finally, and this is an important one for me, is that the public is not driving the agenda. Agencies are driving the agenda. And if there's anything that I know from all of these years of watching it, is that agencies have limitations. And if the public is not driving the agenda, agencies will do what they perceive as being within their capabilities. And that's not enough. So, our challenges. We are a highly developed state. We have many societal issues, even just within the water field. How do you balance HABs versus PFAS versus lead versus, right? How do you balance all of that out? How do you deal with all of that? We are now dealing with myriad small sources. We have a little over 200 public wastewater treatment plants in the state. We have tens of thousands of stormwater outfalls per county, right? The scale of complexity is just phenomenally higher. We have a lot of pollution problems, but how many of them are exciting the public? The Cuyahoga River, folks, hasn't burned in a long time. Our rivers do not run red with slaughterhouse wastes anymore. The Passaic River does not change color downstream of Patterson with the dye lots from the mills, right? So a lot of what we're dealing with doesn't really generate the same anger and excitement and incitement for the public. And the most easy sources are mostly controlled. All right, so what are the possible solutions? One, I strongly suggest that we focus resources on equity and benefits, that we don't sweat the small stuff. One of the problems with that is that means a statewide, uniform, everybody do it the same way system is inherently not cost effective, and it's not environmentally effective. We need to be able to spotlight the issues where they actually exist and focus on those. Second, build interest and support. We've become entirely too scientific and bureaucratic. I'm not even sure we're a movement anymore when you think about it. We are an edifice. We are a set of organizations, but we really need to get back to the public and say, hey, we need to build institutional capacity. DEP cannot do all of this. The 564 municipalities cannot do all of this. So we need to build institutional capacity, and that requires funding. So one of the key issues that we need to face is the ability to develop a routine source of funding that aggregates small amounts from a large number of affected parties, if you will, so that we can really achieve something good. We need to leverage redevelopment. We're going to have a lot of urban redevelopment and suburban redevelopment going on in this state. If we don't capture this moment and turn it to the benefit of water resources, then heaven help us, right? We just will have let the moment go past. We need to focus on solving problems, not just building projects. I have been inveighing for probably 15 years against pilot projects and demonstration projects because the environmental impact sinks without a trace. It does nothing for the environment. We did a project. Can you measure the results? No. No, we can't, because it's too small. And proclaim the successes. We are really bad at blowing our own horns. Really, you know? If we have a success, we ought to be out there saying, look, it works. And you can have this too. All right. So let me make one little small point with regard to budget priorities. New Jersey DOT fiscal 2023 capital projects budget, $4.6+ billion. New Jersey DEP obligated projects funds for watershed protection, I asked them, less than $50 million. So budget priorities indicate public priorities. I tell my students, if you want to see the biggest, most important environmental law in the state or the nation, you look at the budget, because that's where the priorities are set, not the laws. All right. So what are other states doing? Well, they're doing some interesting stuff, some of which we're doing also. Clean Water Act grants and aid through Section 319, the non-point source program. They do it, we do it. That's fine. Clean Water State Revolving Fund, what we call the Water Bank. Some states are doing loans to stormwater utilities. We'll be able to do that too. Once we get a stormwater utility, we have none in New Jersey. There are 2,100 of them out there. Loans to conservation districts for farm BMPs. We don't do that. Loans to municipalities to septic system rehab. We don't do that. Leveraging state revolving fund with USDA Farm Bill funds, we do that. We work with the Rural Development Administration for projects in New Jersey. USDA Farm Bill Source Water Protection Program. I think there's some efforts going on, but not a heck of a lot. Leveraging FEMA funds. If we're taking out homes because they're repetitively damaged, and Brooke Maslow from Rutgers is doing great work on this, can't we turn those properties into something that actually benefits the watershed, not just reduces damages? So there's enough. But my point is, there will never, ever, ever, ever be enough federal funding to do everything that we need to do in New Jersey. If we really want this done, it's us, folks. So how do states leverage this? There are some interesting ideas out there. Stormwater utilities, I mentioned, carbon credits in California. Raleigh, North Carolina has a watershed protection fee program. Colorado uses some of its lottery sales for watershed protection. Kansas, right? Now there is a blue state for you, right? Kansas. Water use fees on public, industrial, and livestock, fertilizer and pesticide fees. This is Kansas, and they're using these funds to fund watershed protection. If they can do it, why the heck can't we, right? Conservation district property tax. Can you imagine the soil conservation districts of New Jersey being given the ability to do a referendum for a property tax, you know, millage fee, you know, it's just 0.01 or 0.02, something small that would allow them to run better programs for improving streams. That's an interesting idea. Source water protection funds, Nature Conservancy is involved in that. All right, so my lessons learned, and I'm coming down to the end of it, I promise. I love this phrase. I actually had to look it up to find out who said it first, and apparently it was Jesse Potter who said it first. If you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got, right? So what have we always done? Comprehensive, complex approaches, insufficient planning funds, woefully inadequate implementation funds. We change directions routinely to fix perceived problems in the process. There is no perfect process. Why does every administration reorganize DEP at least once? Sometimes 2 and 3 times, right? Because there's this perception that there's got to be a better way to do this. Every time you make a change, you benefit some things, other things get worse. We're very good at telling people what to do, but not really convincing them as to why. Why should we treat for PFAS? It's really expensive. All right? And as I said before, major successes are too few and hidden from public view. But I would suggest that the big, big issue is that we need to build long-term, broad public support for water resources protection by making a compelling case. Exactly what it says there. And we aren't going to get there by telling people what they should believe. We aren't going to get there by telling them what's right. People need to convince themselves. Will Rogers, famous raconteur from the 1930s, said, people's minds are changed by observation, not by argument. And that has been proved over and over and over again. We need to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right things. We need to set objectives. If we don't tell people what needs to be done, why should they do it, right? And we need to leverage every program. Why is municipal redevelopment completely divorced from municipal water infrastructure management? I talked years ago to the guy, Chris Palladino in New Brunswick, DevCo. When you do a project, how much attention do you pay to whether or not the water supply and the wastewater systems and the storm sewer systems are appropriate for that particular area? And he said, that's not my business, right? And maybe it isn't his business, but it ought to be somebody's business. There should be somebody connecting the dots and making it work properly. We need to leverage every program, and we need to deal with the funding gap. So what I'm suggesting to you folks is that we need to be thinking for water of something that is analogous to the Transportation Trust Fund. Where does that money come from? Everybody pays a little bit on their gasoline, right? Everybody pays a little bit, but when you add it up, it's billions of dollars a year. Can't we come up with something like that for New Jersey, for our water resources? The other thing is, a lot of you folks work locally. Try to get your communities thinking about this. Where do we want to be in 30 years? And what is the role of water in doing it, right? What is the role of water in our communities? Right now, we sneak it in through pipes. We poke it up into a building. We use it. We sneak it out of the building in pipes, and we send it away. It's like we're afraid of water, right? We're afraid of water. How do we incorporate it into our communities? So that's where we are, and that is my message to you. This is my contact information until June of this year, when I will be retiring. My wife is not absolutely sure of that, but I keep on saying so. And if anybody has ever found the Cistern Chapel, I would like to go visit it. Thank you very much.